Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Garrett Horner. This is stage 18 of the Giro d'Italia 2023. We got 3 guys left on the general classification with Geraint Thomas in pink. We got Almeida, the Portuguese rider, that's sitting second, and then Primoz Roglic at 29 seconds will round out the top 3 of the general classification favorites here on stage 18 before the race starts. Now we'll see that there's a little bit of cake up there because somebody's birthday. It's Geraint Thomas wearing pink. He gets the birthday cake handed from the podium lady. As she hands him over the cake, he's going to celebrate his 37th birthday today in fine fashion before the Giro starts proper. Now, he is the oldest Giro d'Italia leader wearing the pink jersey in the history of the Giro. That's a pretty good thing at 37 years old, but let me remind you, Geraint Thomas, you're not the oldest Grand Tour leader because I not only led the Grand Tour at almost 42, but I won the Vuelta a España in 2013, so you still got some more work to do at 37 years of age. You got another 5 years if you want to beat the real record. Now, let's get into some of the action and some of the details of today's stage. Because at 160 kilometers with 5 categorized climbs, I want to point out some of the details that would be important if you're EF Education starting today's race with Ben Healy in the blue KOM jersey, or if you're Geraint Thomas wearing pink, or if you're Jumbo-Visma, their whole team's in yellow, but they're sitting third on the general classification because yellow is the Tour de France and pink is the Giro. So before the stage starts, what would be some of the tactics if you're EF Education? Well, if I'm looking at 3 of their climbers, they have Caseta here. They have, of course, Ben Healy, and then they have Hugh Carthy. That's a bit of a threat on the general classification, sitting in, I think, 11th on the general classification when the day starts. We look at this flat section, 25 kilometers of flats, maybe 30 proper coming into this first Category 1 climb. That's over 10 kilometers. I think it's 13 at just over 7%. So this is a big climb, about 30 kilometers into today's race. So what are you thinking if you're EF Education? Well, you want to get Ben Healy, Hugh Carthy, and Caseta into this first big climb on today's stage 18, and you want to get them there rested and ready to go to battle up the climb. When you're a small guy, probably weighing about 130, maybe 135 at the most, Ben Healy, when you're doing work on the flats, that really hurts. So keep that in mind when I get into the story. Once the racing starts and the kilometers 0 sign hits there, we'll see the peloton get lit up from Cofidis as he starts the action here right away from kilometer 0. Everything's chaos here at the beginning. We'll see Fernando Gaviria at the front covering moves or pulling the field, trying to bring things back for his teammates. That's a wise decision right there from Movistar Sprinter because he knows he's not going to factor in anywhere late in this stage 18. But we see Ben Healy up there covering attacks and being aggressive early in this stage 18 for EF Education. I don't like this tactic. He's a small guy, but he's climbing good and he's on fabulous form. But you got to get him into the first climb of the day before you let the guy off the leash and start him attacking. Instead, Ben Healy's throwing out chips all over the place, and then we see attacks going left and right. At one point in time, we see a big group up front with some with at least one Ineos rider in there. We look behind and we see that's Jumbo-Visma chasing to pull everything back together. When we're coming into the climb, hasn't quite started proper, but the road's starting to go up. It's Warren Barguil from Arkea Samsic that's throwing down. That'll get brought back, and then we'll see some more attacks in groups of about 6 and 10 riders going up the road early in this climb, and we got some threats because Thibaut Pinot's in there. Pretty certain I saw Hugh Carthy in that group for EF Education, who I said is just outside the top 10 on the general classification. When we look behind, it's Jumbo-Visma on the front controlling what's left of the peloton back there. They got 3, sometimes 4 guys on the front, and then when you look further back, you see Primoz Roglic. He's sitting about 30th position back there, but got a couple teammates around him. A lot of times you might be thinking, wow, Primoz Roglic is at the back. He might not be feeling good. And I brought it up on yesterday's Butterfly Effect that he was in the back coming into the finish of yesterday's stage 17. And that was a little bit of a sign that maybe something might be wrong. Maybe they're just out of place. Maybe they just didn't have good legs. Maybe they just got stuck there and just couldn't get to the front. I don't know, but we need to keep an eye because right now on stage 18 here, it's Primoz Roglic at the back of the peloton of GC favorites. With his team on the front, though, this is usually the sign saying that we don't mind this pace because we got our team on the front. We're not keeping everyone back there. Now, as the groups just keep getting brought back all over the place, it's Israel Premier Tech, and they were aggressive at the beginning with Ben Healy, and now they're still aggressive on this first category climb up there. Derek G is throwing in some work up there, and Frigo's throwing in some work. You got Parapentre up there for AG2R, and like I said, Thibaut Pinot, and those groups all get brought back. Then we're about halfway up this climb, and then another group of 2 and 3 start going up the road, and Pronsky from Astana's up there, but he's just getting dropped by all the groups coming up to him, as we're going to see 5 guys form this front group. Aurelian Parapintres there, Marco Frigo from Israel Premier Tech, and his teammate Derek G. We got Filippo Zana from Jaco Lula and Thibaut Pinot, who's the threat on the general classification, at 6 minutes and 48 seconds back from Geraint Thomas. Those 5 guys are starting to get a gap now. We're starting to wonder, and there was a ton of chaos going up this first climb. So when all that chaos was happening, what was happening back there with EF Education? Well, Ben Healy was getting dropped. We saw some attacks from some of their other teammates in the break and going in the break early, but it all got brought back. And Ben Healy went out the back just after a lot of the sprinters like Gaviria and Mark Cavendish got dropped. With Ben Healy going out the back, that's the Blue Race Leaders KOM jersey there. This was a big mistake, and this is with your EF Education, why you didn't want him attacking on this flat section, because now we're into this climb, and we see the blue jersey coming out the back. And again, we'll move the cameras back up to the group of 5 that's up front. That's Thibaut Pinot. Thibaut Pinot's been going for KOM points throughout this Giro, and now all of a sudden, he's a threat to take the KOM jersey up in this group of 5. Now we'll see Pronsky, the Astana rider that really started this break early with some of the other guys, as he's out there just by himself, hoping that some more company's coming from behind. We'll go back to the peloton. Jumbo-Visma's still on the front, but you might ask yourself, why doesn't Team Ineos come to the front and just put the hammer down? Because Primoz Roglic is like 30th position in a group of 40, maybe 50 riders, sometimes 60 back there. But no matter what size this group of GC favorites in the peloton is back there, Primoz Roglic with some few teammates around him is a little bit too far back for my liking. Well, I'll tell you why Ineos don't want to try to just put the hammer down. They only got 3 guys left in the race, right? One's wearing pink, 2 are climbers, and we are early into today's stage 18 because this is the first KOM climb of the day. Now up front, those 5 riders are going, and I said Pronsky's chasing them. Then we look further back, and there's little attacks happening all over the place back there, and we'll see that it's Warren Barguil, Stefan Williams, Jack Haig, and Stonovich back there from Coratec. Those were the 4 last guys trying to bridge up to the 5 and the 1 rider in front that they're trying to make a bigger breakaway here on stage 18. Now behind, we see Ineos. They finally start getting to the front, but they only have 3 riders. This is late in this first category 1 climb here on stage 18, but they're pulling on the front, and we start seeing the group get reduced back there of the peloton as we see Ineos is driving it to bring back the riders in front. Now, what's the tactic here, and why are Ineos so interested in getting to the front now? Because we haven't seen them pulling throughout this first climb on stage 18, but now they're super motivated. With 3 guys on the front, they're pulling with just 2, and the pink jersey, of course, is sitting. So we know right up front as they're pulling, they want to bring back this group of 4 that's directly in front of them. Why would they want to do it? Well, there's 5 in front, 1 more in front of them. That's 6 riders. If you can go over this first KOM with only 6 in front, even with Thibaut Pinot up there at 6 minutes and 48 seconds, that's not a big threat. But if you start letting 4 more get in there, and one is Israel Premier Tech, Stephen Williams. If he gets up to that front group with 2 more teammates up there, that's 3 Israel Premier Tech riders. They could start working really good. Maybe 2 riders just sell out and start going full gas. Or maybe the whole group up there of 10 that would come together would just start pulling hard. Who knows? So Ineos know they're getting close to the summit of this first categorized climb. Their director, I'm sure, is saying, hey guys, just pull back to 4 in front and then shut the gas off. It's only a kilometer and a half till we get to the top of the KOM. And that's all the work you got to do. You'll shut it down. 5 riders will be up the road. And then we got an easy day. Well, they pull back the group in 4, and Warren Barguil, Arceus Samsic, he doesn't want any of it as they're going through the feed zone. He looks back, see they're getting caught, and Arceus Samsic rider hits the turbo button and accelerates away from the peloton. As he does, he's going to pick up Pronsky. Look at Pronsky looking back. You know he's looking back at Arceus Samsic's Warren Barguil, and he's thinking, save me, please, Arceus Samsic, somebody get up here. Those 2 will blend together. The top 5 up front here on stage 18, they'll go over the top of the KOM with Thibaut Pinot taking maximum KOM points. EF Education, you failed the beginning of stage 18 here because you don't have Ben Healy in the front group, but you let Thibaut Pinot in here get maximum points. Now those 5 guys, they'll go over the top. Then we see 2 chasers. That's Pronsky and that's Arceus Samsic's Warren Barguil. They're just a few seconds behind, probably 45 seconds behind that front group. So they're still going to have to do some work up here with 120 kilometers to go. Peloton behind now has Ineos on the front, but they've settled down because they caught the majority of those 4 riders in front, 3 of them getting caught and coming back. Now we see with 110K to go, Bronski and Warren Barguil will catch the front group of 5, and that'll make 7 guys here on stage 18. The gap's up to about 2 minutes right away, and we look back as the Peloton starts going slower, it starts swelling in size. Up front, the group of 7, every time they're passing the KOMs, it's going to be up there Thibaut Pinot taking maximum points. But when we look back at the Peloton, as it swelled in size throughout the stage, we got 5 Ineos riders on the front of the Peloton. And guys, they only started today's stage with 5. So this is a job well done. They got through the first section, putting guys into the break on the flat section, going up the climb. Jumbo-Visma did the bulk of the work, and then they only had to do about a K1/2 to control the lead gap here of Thibaut Pinot and this group of 6 riders with Thibaut Pinot to make 7. Now behind, we also see Jumbo-Visma in full force. They got 8 guys. UAE team members have a solid squad too. So the first 3 major teams here at the Giro are wrapped tight in the Peloton. Up front, with about 35 kilometers to go, the road gets a little bit narrower, and then with about 30K to go, when we're going to start the Category 1 climb here. This one's a big one too. As they come up this climb, we start seeing Pronsky, this Stana rider, he starts getting dropped out the back with just about 28 kilometers to go. That'll be it for this Stana rider. Now we got 6 riders in the front, and the Peloton behind's getting interested because at the same time Pronsky's getting dropped out of the front group, once the Peloton hits this section, it's time for our Ensman, Ineos, to start going to work. They'll get rid of their 2 flat guys, Salvatore Puccio and Ben Swift, who did a great job pulling throughout the stage to get into this final climbing part of the stage. Now, I told you, when you looked at the stage, you look at the flat section you got to get through, and then EF Education should have focused on that first climb to get Ben Healy or one of their climbers into this front group, and preferably not Thibaut Pinot, but they failed on both occasions because their tactics were terrible at the start of the race. What should they have done instead of let Thibaut Pinot in this front group? Might not have necessarily been able to control Thibaut Pinot because he's climbing well, but if you've done the flat section, maybe you ride the flat section with Magnus Cort Nielsen and Alberto Bettiol to keep the Peloton all together. And you come into that first climb with a fresh Ben Healy so that he can be in this front move with Thibaut Pinot. Instead, he's not, and Thibaut Pinot, as we're coming up this 3rd climb to go here at stage 18, he's taking maximum KOM points, and he's got 5 riders to help him throughout the finish of the stage. The time gap got up to around 6 minutes here on stage 18, so Thibaut Pinot's got a threat for the general classification if our Ensman can't do some damage. But when they're going down the descent, this is when Warren Barguil gets on the front, and he is blowing through the corners. This will send both of the Israel Premier Tech riders out the back of the group of 6 up front. As we see, it's Derek G's up there floundering around these corners too, as he can't keep the speed with Warren Barguil. They get to the bottom. There's 4 riders in the front group here on stage 18, but they're going to get caught behind from Derek G, who comes on after the road flattens out a little bit. Derek G, he's interested in waiting for Frigo back there, his teammate, so he's not going to pull, and the 4 riders are kind of soft pulling for a little bit, and then all of a sudden Frigo will come back on. Now they're going to start the penultimate climb. Back there with the Peloton, we see that it was Ineos riding the front down this twisty, turny, curvy road all the way down the descent as they're getting into the flat section before the penultimate climb starts proper. Once we get into this penultimate climb, though, up front, it's Pinot that's throwing in some attacks. He's got Zana with him right away, and we see riders coming out the back here as Frigo's coming out the back for Israel Premier Tech. AG2R rider Parapetre, he's going to come out soon too, so those 2 guys will have some company. Up front, Thibaut Pinot's trying some accelerations, but Zana, he doesn't want to pull with the French rider, and we'll see it start to come back together. Now, with 8.5 kilometers to go, they'll go into a tight left turn. The road that was a little bit narrow becomes even more narrow and a whole lot steeper. This is when Thibaut Pinot gets on the accelerator. Filippo Zana's locked onto the Frenchman's wheel as he's not letting him go. Then we start seeing Derek G coming out the back, and along with Warren Barguil. With Warren Barguil coming out the back and Derek G, that leaves 2 guys to go over the top of this climb at 5.5K to go. It's the top of the KOM. We see Thibaut Pinot again taking maximum KOM points. EF Education, you definitely failed Ben Healy with the tactics here on today's stage 18, as you just should never have had him tacking on the flat sections. Now up front with Thibaut Pinot going over the top of the climb, putting himself into the jersey. They're going to have to battle coming into the last and final climb. The last climb, very difficult for about just over 2 kilometers and just about 7% to the line. Let's back up the film though and go to the GC favorites back there as we see the peloton being led by Ineos. De Plus back there. De Plus was doing a solid job on the front. He had some help from our Ensman pulling at the front going up this penultimate climb too. But Jumbo-Visma sitting just behind UAE Team Emirates as they start coming up to this 7.5 kilometers to go. Actually 8.5 for the GC guys because they're 1K behind the front group of 2 up there. Once they start coming up to this left turn, look, just on the left side there is Primož Roglič. On the right is Sepp Kuss, and in the middle is the pink jersey, Geraint Thomas. They'll come into this left bend. Once they do, we lose sight of them as the tree takes over the picture there. Once they come out of the picture, Sepp Kuss is on the front of the GC favorites, and the battle has begun with 8.5 kilometers to go. Now let's go back up to the front group because they got a battle happening up there too, right? Filippo Zana in the Italian national jersey. He's going to take some pull with Thibaut Pinot along the flat section before we start the last and final climb here. We'll see Zana on the front, and then Thibaut Pinot will take over. Those two will help each other out a little bit, with Thibaut Pinot doing probably 70% of the work here as we come into the final 1K to go. Thibaut Pinot on the front, just under a K to go with 500 meters. You see him start looking back. 400 meters, he's looking back again. 225 meters to go. There's a little zigzag to the finish, a little right, little left to the finish. And Thibaut Pinot is going to accelerate at 225 meters to go to the line. This is a little ways out, but he's only got one rider on his wheel, the Jaco Lula rider. Once Thibaut Pinot accelerates at 225, 175 thereabouts, he's going to look back. This is another mistake right here as he's looking back, because right on his wheel, getting a solid draft, is Zana, the Jaco Lula rider. As they come into the left bend to the finish of the line there with about 100 meters to go, Zana punches it off of Thibaut Pinot's wheel. As they come out of the corner with just over 50 meters to go, they're side by side. Under 50 meters to go, Filippo Zana has the lead. Then with about 30 meters to go, you see Filippo Zana look left. He knows he's got it won, so he sits up and celebrates another stage victory here for Jaco Lula. Filippo Zana and the Italian national champion jersey. Thibaut Pinot will have to settle for second, but like I said, he did take the blue jersey away from EF Education's Ben Healy's with the bad tactics they had at the beginning of today's stage. Behind to round out the podium, well, Warren Barguil, he dislodged his companions, dropping down the last descent and rode solo up the final climb here to get podium spot here on stage 18. Behind, let's go back to what happened at 8.5 kilometers to go, because Sepp Kuss threw on the accelerator button and blew this race up. Primož Roglič locked onto his wheel. Geraint Thomas looking solid. Just behind Geraint Thomas, Eddie Dunbar. Jaco Lula's having a solid ride here. We see there's one other helper there for G. Thomas, Ineos sitting on the back. Then we look back a little further. There's a gap to UAE Team Emirates. That's Almeida back there. Almeida is struggling here on the second real mountain stage of the Giro d'Italia, but he's got a teammate, Jay Vine, in front. Got some other company there with Lucas in there and Caruso sitting on his wheel. But Jay Vine's got a little bit of gap on his Portuguese teammate there, Almeida. Jay Vine will back off the throttle, come back, and pick up Almeida. And now Jay Vine's trying to do damage control like Sepp Kuss had to do on the earlier mountain stage two days before. Up front, Sepp Kuss is driving it. Now we go into this tight right turn there with the building, the house right there on the side. Primož Roglič launches a hard attack. This is going to send Eddie Dunbar out the back with Sepp Kuss. But Geraint Thomas, Ineos in pink, is locked on to Primož Roglic's wheel, who's clearly in flying form. Now again, when you go back to that first climb, Primož Roglič was at the back, and you say, wow, maybe that was a bad moment. What can you do, Ineos? Could you have attacked them? You couldn't have attacked them, because if you did then, it's too far away to go all the way to the line with only two teammates and one Geraint Thomas in pink. So now you're looking at Primož Roglič. He's on flying form. He's throwing down. Geraint Thomas is locked on his wheel. Sepp Kuss, he's off the back with Eddie Dunbar, and then Eddie Dunbar starts to crack. So Sepp Kuss, the American Flying Eagle, jumps him, bridges back up here to Primož Roglič. Now we look a little further back. Eddie Dunbar's got some company because Jay Vine is doing a solid ride for Almeida. Luknesen's gotten dropped. Caruso's gotten dropped. We see Almeida's holding on to Jay Vine's wheel for dear life there as they wrap up. Eddie Dunbar going over the top of this KOM. Now they're like 15 seconds behind the group of three in front. As they drop down the descent, the first three are going through the corners as fast as they can. Then we look back there. Jay Vine goes into the right. It's a real quick left. He can't make the left. Eddie Dunbar sees it coming, realizes that he's in trouble. He has to go straight and lock up the brakes. Jay Vine's off the road with one foot out of the pedal on the mountainside. And Almeida, who made the turn, diving hard into the left side, stays on the gas. You look at him as he's coming out of the trees there. He's right behind the three riders in front as the Portuguese riders throwing everything in, trying to close the gap up to the GC favorites of Primoz Roglic and Geraint Thomas, with Sepp Kuss doing all the damage up front. We look back and we see Jay Vine has come back to Almeida, so he's pulling through this flat section for just a few hundred meters before we start the final climb. Get in the final climb proper. Primoz Roglic throws in acceleration. Sepp Kuss is done for the day. Geraint Thomas is locked on the Primoz Roglic's wheel. Then behind, Almeida's doing the same thing. He's throwing full gas. Eddie Dunbar's coming out the back. Jay Vine's it for today's stage 18. As we see, Almeida's going full gas, trying to bridge up to the two in front. Now, all of a sudden, this was a great surprise right here, but I appreciate it from Geraint Thomas as he looks back. He goes, oh man, we got Almeida in trouble. He's second on the general classification. Then Geraint Thomas starts pulling. Primoz Roglic is locked on his wheel. Geraint Thomas will extend that gap just out a little bit further to Almeida, who looked like he was starting to close it. With that gap opened up, we know that these two guys are coming into the line together, but what's going to happen in the last 1K? Well, they worked well together. Primoz Roglic did the bulk of the work coming in the final few hundred meters and drove it into the line just under 2 minutes from Thibaut Pinot's time up front. So they're clear for the general classification, and he's putting time on Almeida. We look at Almeida, who'll come in just under 20 seconds back on Primoz Roglic and Geraint Thomas, who finished 7th and 8th on the stage. And then we see Almeida will finish the top 10 in the stage 2, but drop from 2nd to 3rd on the general classification. Look after the line, Primoz Roglic, he's there with his family giving smooches, and you look at his suit there, and there's not that much salt on it, so the Slovenian clearly is on good form here in stage 18, and we got back-to-back stages coming, so tomorrow's stage 19, another big mountain stage. Now we've seen Primoz Roglic go bad on the first real mountain stage. We saw Almeida lose some time on today's, both doing damage control with fantastic lieutenants, Jay Vine and Sepp Kuss, that is. And now you got to ask yourself, is the butterfly effect going to have any kind of effect when we're talking about back-to-back mountain stages now for Geraint Thomas? He looks fantastic. Doesn't seem like he should be able to blow on tomorrow's race when he looked this good here on stage 18. But remember, this is the first 2 back-to-back stages here at the Giro d'Italia, so anything can happen on tomorrow's stage. Primoz Roglic is in 2nd on the general classification, 29 seconds behind Geraint Thomas, and then at 39 seconds is Almeida sitting 3rd here. So tomorrow is still a 3-way big-time battle here for stage 19. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on tomorrow's stage 19 of the Giro d'Italia.